The year is 1941, and the German Wehrmacht stands on the precipice of the largest military invasion in human history. As millions of soldiers march toward the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Soviet Union, their primary infantry weapon is the Karabiner 98 Kurz, a bolt-action rifle designed in the late 19th century. In an era of rapid technological acceleration, the standard German rifleman is locked into a slow, 5-round manual action, requiring precision aim and deliberate cycling after every single shot. Meanwhile, German tactical doctrine remains rigidly anchored to the belt-fed machine gun, forcing the entire infantry squad to act as a security and ammunition-carrying detail for a single weapon. This defensive posture, while highly effective in static warfare, is about to collide head-on with the fluid, brutal realities of the Eastern Front. In the shadows of this orthodox thinking, a revolution in military ballistics is quietly taking shape at the Polte ammunition factory in Magdeburg. For years, visionary ordnance officers and ballisticians have argued that traditional full-power rifle cartridges are vastly overpowered for the vast majority of infantry engagements. Historically, standard military rifles were chambered in heavy, long-range rounds designed to strike targets over 1,000 meters away, a vestige of 19th century open-field skirmishing. In reality, modern combat analysis reveals that the vast majority of infantry firefights occur at ranges under 400 meters, with a critical concentration of lethal engagements taking place well within 200 meters. At these practical combat distances, the heavy recoil, excessive weight, and immense material cost of full-power ammunition are not only wasteful but active hindrances to the individual soldier's combat effectiveness. To bridge this massive gap between the long-range bolt-action rifle and the short-range, inaccurate submachine gun, German engineers developed the 7.92 by 33 mm Kurz round. By shortening the standard Mauser cartridge casing from 57 mm to 33 mm, they create a revolutionary intermediate cartridge that retains the lethal diameter of a rifle bullet but carries a significantly lighter powder charge. This reduction in gunpowder creates a mild, highly controllable recoil impulse when fired, making selective fire automatic infantry rifles a mechanical reality for the first time. Visionary designers at Henel, under the direction of Hugo Schmeisser, immediately begin crafting a gas-operated weapon to chamber this new round. This experimental weapon, designated the Maschinen Karabiner 42, is the direct technological ancestor of the weapon that would later change the face of infantry combat forever, the Sturmgewehr 44. Historically, this technological marvel would be delayed for years by bureaucratic inertia, official skepticism, and Adolf Hitler's direct veto. Haunted by the logistical nightmares of World War I, the German dictator feared that introducing a new cartridge would cause catastrophic supply failures and idle existing ammunition factories. Consequently, the development of the intermediate round and its companion weapon was forced into a clandestine, underground struggle, with engineers renaming the weapon to disguise its true nature from high-level inspection. But what if this critical bottleneck had never occurred? What if, in early 1941, the German High Command had recognized the paradigm-shifting potential of the intermediate round, bypassed the bureaucratic delays, and fully mobilized their industrial capacity to mass-produce the Sturmgewehr 3 years ahead of its historical debut? As Operation Barbarossa commences in June 1941, German infantry divisions armed with the early Sturmgewehr would have brought an unprecedented, terrifying level of firepower to the vast battlefields of Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states. Historically, as the Wehrmacht advanced deeper into Soviet territory, infantry units frequently found themselves engaged in fluid, fast-moving skirmishes where tactical speed and sudden volume of fire dictated survival. The bolt-action Karabiner 98 Kurz, while exceptionally accurate and reliable, was inherently limited by its slow rate of fire, leaving German squads vulnerable during aggressive advances or sudden counter-ambushes. Had the early Sturmgewehr been available to the frontline troops of Army Group Center and Army Group South, the tactical dynamic of these opening engagements would have been fundamentally transformed, giving the German infantryman the ability to transition instantly from precise semi-automatic fire to devastating fully automatic suppression. This sudden leap in individual firepower would have completely disrupted standard Red Army defensive calculations during the chaotic border battles of 1941. Historically, Soviet defensive lines were designed to withstand coordinated artillery bombardments and tank thrusts, relying on the assumption that advancing German infantry squads could be pinned down at medium range by concentrated rifle fire. However, an infantry squad equipped with Sturmgewehrs could have generated an overwhelming wall of lead, advancing under their own continuous fire suppressive shield without needing to wait for supporting heavy weapons. The ability of individual riflemen to deliver 30-round bursts of controllable intermediate caliber fire would have shattered Soviet defensive pockets before they could coordinate local counterattacks, accelerating the pace of the German advance and preventing Red Army units from establishing organized secondary defensive lines. Furthermore, the early deployment of the Sturmgewehr would have played a decisive role in the dense, claustrophobic forests of western Russia and the swamps of the Pripyat. In these heavily wooded terrains, visibility was severely restricted, and firefights were almost always sudden, violent encounters at extremely close ranges. Under these conditions, the long barrel and slow bolt cycle of the Karabiner 98 Kurz were severe liabilities, as soldiers struggled to maneuver their weapons through thick brush and could rarely fire more than 1 or 2 shots before being overrun. Equipped with a compact, selective-fire weapon feeding from a 30-round box magazine, German patrol units would have possessed an overwhelming tactical advantage, easily suppressing and neutralizing Soviet partisan groups and scouting detachments in the opening seconds of an ambush, permanently securing the Wehrmacht's immediate flanks. The psychological impact of facing thousands of individual automatic rifles in 1941 cannot be overstated. During this period of the war, the Red Army was already suffering from immense command and control chaos, with raw conscripts being thrown directly into the path of the advancing German military machine. Hearing the continuous, thunderous roar of automatic Sturmgewehr fire from entire infantry companies, rather than the sporadic, rhythmic cracks of bolt-action rifles, would have induced immediate panic and accelerated the collapse of Soviet morale. Frontline reports of a German /Wonder rifle that never needed to be cycled and could spray lethal rifle caliber fire at will would have spread like wildfire through the Soviet ranks, turning tactical withdrawals into chaotic, uncoordinated retreats and solidifying the perception of German invincibility. The tactical superiority of an early Sturmgewehr becomes even more pronounced when examined against the primary infantry weapons of the Soviet Union in 1941. Historically, the Red Army was the world leader in the widespread adoption of submachine guns, most notably the iconic PPSH-41, which entered mass production in late 1941 and featured a massive 71-round drum magazine. The PPSH-41 was a devastating close-quarters weapon, capable of firing over 900 rounds per minute of pistol-caliber ammunition. In the ruined streets, basements, and sewer networks of Soviet cities like Stalingrad, Rostov, and Kharkov, the high volume of fire from Soviet submachine gun detachments consistently devastated German infantry squads, whose bolt-action rifles were completely outmatched in close-quarters urban combat. However, the Sturmgewehr completely redraws this tactical equation by bridging the gap between submachine gun and battle rifle. While the Soviet PPSH-41 was highly lethal inside 50 meters, its lightweight pistol cartridge lost velocity, energy, and accuracy rapidly beyond that range, becoming virtually useless at distances over 100 meters. In contrast, the Sturmgewehr's 7.92mm Kurz round retained lethal velocity, flat trajectory, and exceptional accuracy out to 400 meters. This meant that German soldiers armed with the Sturmgewehr could easily engage and destroy Soviet submachine gunners long before the Soviets could close the distance to bring their weapons to bear. The Sturmgewehr effectively created a /firepower dead zone for the Red Army, completely neutralizing their submachine gun advantage in open or semi-urban environments. Against the standard Soviet infantry rifle, the bolt-action Mosin-Nagant, the early Sturmgewehr represented a generational leap in combat capability. The Mosin-Nagant was a rugged, hard-hitting, and dependable rifle, but like the German Karabiner 98 Kurz, it was limited by its 5-round internal magazine and slow manual operation. In a medium-range firefight at 200 meters, a single German soldier armed with a Sturmgewehr could deliver more aimed, lethal shots in 5 seconds than an entire Soviet rifle fire team could produce in half a minute. This massive disparity would have stripped the Red Army of its traditional numerical advantage, allowing smaller, highly mobile German units to successfully hold defensive positions against vastly superior Soviet infantry assaults simply through sheer, unyielding volume of fire. The Red Army did possess its own semi-automatic rifle design in 1941, the Tokarev SVT-40, which was intended to replace their bolt-action weapons. While the SVT-40 offered a 10-round magazine and a semi-automatic action, it was highly complex, difficult to maintain in muddy field conditions, and suffered from severe vertical stringing due to its thin barrel and fragile stock. Soviet conscripts, often lacking advanced technical training, struggled to operate and maintain the delicate gas system of the Tokarev rifle, leading to widespread reliability failures on the front line. The Sturmgewehr, engineered from the ground up for rugged stamp steel mass production and simple, robust gas operation, would have proved far more reliable in the harsh, dusty, and freezing conditions of the Russian front, cementing its total dominance over every class of Soviet infantry arm. The introduction of a mass-produced Sturmgewehr in 1941 would have triggered a profound, fundamental restructuring of the German infantry squad's tactical doctrine. Historically, the entire German squad of 10 men was built around a single, central weapon, the belt-fed general-purpose machine gun, usually the MG-34 or the later MG-42. The standard riflemen in the squad carried bolt-action carabiner 98 Kurz rifles, and their primary tactical purpose was not to engage the enemy directly, but to carry spare ammunition belts, protect the machine gun team from flank attacks, and secure the gun's position. This doctrine made the German squad incredibly potent in defense but highly vulnerable if the machine gun jammed, ran out of ammunition, or was targeted and neutralized by enemy mortar or sniper fire. Equipping the entire squad with the Sturmgewehr completely decentralizes this firepower, turning every single infantryman into an independent, highly lethal fire team. No longer would the squad be paralyzed by the loss of their primary machine gun. Instead, each soldier would possess the capability to lay down intensive suppressive fire or launch rapid, aggressive assaults. The squad leader, typically armed with a low-capacity submachine gun, could now coordinate highly dynamic backslash fire and maneuver backslash tactics. One half of the squad could easily suppress an entire enemy trench line with controlled, rapid semi-automatic fire from their 30-round magazines, while the other half of the squad advanced rapidly to flank the position, carrying their own organic, high-volume firepower with them. This doctrinal shift would have drastically reduced German infantry casualties during offensive operations. Historically, when attacking fortified Soviet positions, German infantrymen had to make dangerous rushes across open ground, relying on the distant, stationary suppression of their squad machine gun. With the Sturmgewehr, advancing soldiers could fire accurately from the hip or shoulder while moving, a technique known as assault fire. This continuous, moving wall of suppressive fire would force enemy defenders to keep their heads down, allowing German squads to close the distance and breach defensive lines with unprecedented speed. The tactical flexibility of the squad would have reached its absolute zenith, combining the long-range precision of a rifle company with the devastating assault power of a submachine gun platoon. Additionally, this squad-level revolution would have significantly enhanced the utility of the German light machine gun team itself. With the riflemen now capable of providing their own sustained suppressive fire, the MG-34 or MG-42 could be utilized more strategically, shifting from a constant defensive necessity to an aggressive, offensive support weapon. The machine gun crew would no longer need to burn through thousands of rounds of ammunition just to keep the squad from being overrun, as the Sturmgewehr-armed riflemen could easily shoulder the burden of local suppression. This cooperative, highly flexible firepower matrix would have made the 1941 German infantry squad the most tactically advanced and lethal small-unit maneuver force on the globe, setting a standard that modern militaries still copy to this day. While the tactical and squad-level benefits of an early Sturmgewehr are undeniable, the logistical reality of mass-producing such a weapon in 1941 presents a monumental, incredibly complex industrial challenge. Historically, German wartime industry was notorious for its fragmentation, lack of standardization, and constant interference from political and military factions. Introducing a completely new weapon system on the eve of Operation Barbarossa would have thrown this fragile industrial ecosystem into severe disarray. The production of the Sturmgewehr required highly specialized sheet metal stamping machinery, precision welding equipment, and advanced metallurgy to ensure the stamp steel receivers did not warp or crack under the intense heat and pressure of fully automatic fire. In 1941, German factories were still heavily reliant on traditional, slow machining methods, carefully carving receivers and barrels out of solid blocks of high-grade steel. Shifting this entire manufacturing philosophy to high speed, automated metal stamping would have required a massive, coordinated reorganization of the nation's machine tool industry. Frontline factories would have had to temporarily halt or reduce the production of established weapons like the Carabiner 98 Kurz and the MP40 submachine gun to retool their assembly lines for the new rifle. During the critical opening phases of the war, any temporary drop in overall weapon output could have had catastrophic consequences for a Wehrmacht that was already struggling to equip its rapidly expanding army. The logistical challenge of ammunition distribution is perhaps even more daunting than the production of the rifle itself. Historically, the German supply chain was a chaotic patchwork of horse-drawn carts, standard gauge railways, and limited motor transport, all straining to deliver millions of tons of supplies across the vast, roadless Russian landscape. Introducing a completely new caliber of ammunition, the 7.92 by 33mm Kurz, alongside the standard rifle and machine gun round, would have created a logistical nightmare. Frontline supply officers would have had to manage two distinct types of 8mm ammunition, leading to inevitable shipping errors where Sturmgewehr units received full-power rifle ammo they could not use, while machine gun teams received short intermediate rounds that lacked the power to cycle their weapons. Furthermore, the incredible rate of fire of the Sturmgewehr would have dramatically increased the overall ammunition consumption of the entire infantry force. A soldier armed with a bolt-action rifle might expend 30 to 50 rounds in a heavy day of combat. A soldier armed with a Sturmgewehr could easily burn through hundreds of rounds in a single intense engagement. This exponential increase in demand would have put an unbearable strain on Wehrmacht's supply columns, which were already failing to deliver basic food, fuel, and winter clothing to the front lines. To prevent the weapon from becoming a useless, heavy steel club, Wehrmacht logistics would have had to undergo a radical, highly efficient modernization, a feat that historical German planners proved completely incapable of achieving under the mounting pressure of a multi-front war. Ultimately, the strategic question remains: could a mass-produced 1941 Sturmgewehr have altered the final outcome of World War II? In the vast, macro-strategic landscape of global conflict, wars are rarely won or lost by individual infantry weapons, no matter how technologically advanced or tactically dominant they may be. The ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany was dictated by massive strategic realities: the overwhelming industrial capacity of the United States, the endless manpower reserves of the Soviet Union, and the critical, crippling shortages of strategic raw materials like petroleum, rubber, and high-grade alloy metals. No small arm, not even the revolutionary Sturmgewehr, could directly solve Germany's fundamental strategic vulnerabilities. However, the early deployment of this weapon would have dramatically intensified the brutality of the Eastern Front, potentially stretching the conflict out and making the Allied advance far more costly in terms of human lives. Had German infantry divisions been fully equipped with the Sturmgewehr during the critical winter battles of 1941 and 1942, the Red Army's massive counteroffensives around Moscow and Rostov would have faced a far more devastating, impenetrable wall of defensive fire. The defensive power of Sturmgewehr-equipped units, capable of delivering sustained, automatic fire from temporary defensive positions, would have stalled Soviet breakthrough attempts, preventing the encirclement and destruction of entire German corps and forcing the Soviet Union into an even more agonizing, prolonged war of attrition. In this alternate timeline, the tactical superiority of the Sturmgewehr might have allowed German forces to secure key strategic objectives that historically slipped through their fingers. The capture of Moscow in late 1941, or the successful seizure and securing of the Caucasian oil fields in 1942, might have been realized if frontline infantry squads possessed the overwhelming firepower needed to break stubborn Soviet urban defense points and secure key transport hubs before reinforcements could arrive. While this might not have resulted in an outright German victory, it would have fundamentally altered the strategic map of Europe, pushing the front lines far deeper into Soviet territory and delaying the eventual collapse of the Wehrmacht by several critical months or even years. In the final analysis, the early Sturmgewehr represents one of the greatest tactical _IFS of military history. It was a weapon that was years ahead of its time, a brilliant synthesis of ballistics and industrial design that rendered every other infantry rifle on the planet obsolete overnight. Had German leadership possessed the foresight to embrace this technological revolution in 1941, they would have handed their soldiers a decisive tactical hammer. Yet, in the grand, sweeping theatre of total war, where steel mills, oil wells, and transoceanic supply lines ultimately decide the fate of nations, the Sturmgewehr would have remained a brilliant tactical masterpiece, struggling in vain to hold back the overwhelming strategic tide of a world united against them.